Everybody and their mother's talking about the eclipse. But did you know, Aaron, that there is a connection between the eclipse and the red heifers that is going to be sacrificed in Israel?
What's up, reconcilers? My name is Aaron, and this is David, and this is Reconcile, where we seek to connect the controversial, the supernatural, and the ordinary to the deeper truths in the Bible. You can find our podcast free on YouTube, Patreon, Rumble, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're notified of new episodes. And let us know what you think in the comments. So if you have questions or if topics you want us to discuss. But before we start in today's topic, I have answers to last podcast trivia questions and some new questions. So the first question was, what were the two main languages used for the New Testament? And that would be two, which were Greek and Aramaic. The second one was, what is gematria? It's a numerological system that assigns numerical values to letters, words, and phrases. And what is the number that was represented by the Torah, and why? Well, the number is 613. So if you take Torah and you take all those words and you use gematria to actually convert those, it equals 613. Now, why is that important? Because the Torah has 613 laws in it, and Torah means law.
Wow.
Crazy.
Cool.
Like, how would you even do that on purpose? So here are this week's trivia questions. What day of the week was Jesus actually crucified? Number two, what did the Israelites have to do when the music was played during Nebuchadnezzar's reign? Number three, for what purpose did Paul write the letter to the Thessalonians? So put your answers in the comments and listen to our next episode to see if you're right. So what are we going to talk about today?
Okay, so everybody and their mother's talking about the eclipse. And there's a lot of interesting things coming out and a lot of connections to be made. But did you know, Aaron, that there is a connection between the eclipse and the red heifers that is going to be sacrificed in Israel?
I did not know that. So let's talk about what the red heifers are in the first place. So you're talking about the red heifers that that the Jews are actually going to be sacrificing and burning to ashes and on, April 10th, I believe. And they spent $1 million on the ramp, and it has to be on the Mount of Olives because of like an Exodus or something. It talks about in order to build a temple, God's temple, Jewish temple, they have to do these things. And that's used to purify all of the things in the temple in that process. So that's a big deal because that means the Jews are at least planning or hoping to build a third temple really soon. And so the red heifers were the heifers that they found in Texas that have all of these criteria, that can't have a single white hair, have to be not have been ever been like haltered or used for labor, or like all of these kind of rules that they had to have. And they finally found some, and now they're working on sacrificing them to then start the rebuilding of the third Jewish temple.
Yep, exactly. It goes back to Numbers in the Bible where Moses ordered the Israelites to go ahead and sacrifice that heifer, burn it so that they can do the ritualistic cleansing. So yes, you're right. So in order to build the third temple, which I never thought I'd see in my lifetime,
Yeah.
people are talking about it right now. And we can talk all day about the prophetic significance of that and what that means. And, I go back and forth on things. But in order to do that, they must ceremonially cleanse not only the priests themselves, but also the tools and the instruments that they're going to be using for sacrifices after they build the temple. So anyway, they only need one, right? And just as you said, it has to be without blemish. And again, it has to be completely perfect, and it's very hard to find. I mean, try finding a cow without a single misplaced hair, and that's what we're talking about.
And a red one.
And a red one. And so there's actually 5 total, and they're going to pick one to do the sacrifice. And so these things have to be inspected, and they're inspected daily by rabbis. In fact, they've already spent $500,000 getting those things over there. I think it's an abomination. I think it's an abomination towards God. I know people are getting excited about all this stuff, but Jesus Christ sacrificed himself on the cross. He shed his blood. The Son of God shed his blood for us. and they're going to sacrifice a cow instead. It's a rejection of that and sacrificing a cow in his place. So I think it's sad, but it's also very interesting. And yeah, it's worth noting that this is something that it pains my heart to see. Actually, I mean, we want these people to come to Christ. They plan on doing this. There's been plans in the works to build this third temple, and they got all the cows from Texas. And like I said, very difficult to find them. So one of the cows in Texas came from Houston. All the rest of them, the other four, came from a place called Rockwall, Texas, on a ranch called Triple Creek Ranch. So the first thing that I thought of, like Rockwall, Texas, I don't know why, but the image came into my mind of the Western Wailing Wall that the Orthodox Jews believe is the remnants of the Temple Mount, and so that was destroyed in AD 70. So I thought, well, that's interesting. I wonder where, and I don't know why that popped in my head, because I just saw an interview with somebody, I don't know if he's a rabbi or what, talking about these red heifers. I'm just like, I wonder where they got those. They came from Rockwall, Texas. There were four of them, and I had no idea where Rockwall was. So I looked it up, and it is directly in the path of the eclipse. It's just east of Dallas. So I thought that was quite interesting.
So the eclipse is going through. What was the city that the eclipse is also going through? That, or is it where the two join together?
Oh, so yeah, well, that's Makanda, right? So that's actually where the 2017 eclipse intersects with the 2024 eclipse. And this also gets interesting because Makanda is nicknamed the Star of Egypt. It even says it on their front page. The city of Makanda is actually nicknamed Star of Egypt, and it has as their symbol blacked out kind of sun, which I think is very interesting.
Oh yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, and around, just right in the immediate vicinity of Makanda, like right next to it, is a state park. It's called Giant City State Park, right? So that's interesting too, right? You think about the biblical giants and the transgression of the angels and the people intermingling with them and creating the Nephilim. So it's called Giant City State Park, and the prominent feature of that park that's also right there on the map is called Devil's Stand Table. And it is, I'm telling you, this is in the crosshairs. This is like the bullseye for where both of the eclipses passed over.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. I mean, there's all these things that people are saying that are like, we have no idea if anything crazy is going to happen during the eclipse or after the eclipse. You know, that people talk about 3 days of darkness and maybe no electricity. I think the 3 days of darkness is connected because of the 7 Ninevehs that it's going over, and then Jesus saying, I'll give you the sign of Jonah, 3 days and 3 nights in the depths and will Sheol. And maybe that's where that connection of the 3 nights of darkness, is. We're not saying we know anything's going to happen, but we're just trying to seek to connect the controversial, the spiritual, in the ordinary. Like these things, we're trying to connect these things that we don't know. It's like we're connecting dots that we don't know necessarily what they mean yet, or if they mean anything. But we're going, well, this seems like a coincidence. There's sure a lot of coincidences, so let's just put these dots together and see what it means. So it's just a lot of speculation of we have no idea, but just trying to connect the dots.
I actually don't think anything's going to happen, but what I do think it means, something like an eclipse is one of the only signs that the devil can't really mimic. That so we know in Scripture that it tells us the purpose of the luminary bodies, the sun, the moon, and the stars, is for us telling signs and seasons. And so, you're not to worship these things. We don't do astrology. We don't get into the occult and these sorts of things, but we're told to actually watch for these signs. And so this eclipse is something that has been set in motion from the beginning, from God. This is from God. And I guarantee you, if you took an X on a map in the United States and randomly put your finger down it, it wouldn't none of this stuff would be popping up like you're seeing. You mentioned the 7 Ninevehs. Now, 2 of them, I don't think all of them are directly in the path. I think 2 of them are directly under the path. But actually, I think there's even 8 if you count the Nineveh that is in Canada that passes over. I had no idea that there were that many Ninevehs. So that's interesting. And along with all of the rest of the stuff that's going on at the same time, right? Like NASA is launching a rocket called, 3 rockets, and the project is called APEP. And in the Greek, it's called Apophis, which is the same name that the asteroid that's projected to pass by the Earth very closely in 2029 is called. And so, everything's named after these gods. And this particular god, Apec, is an Egyptian god. Remember, the center point in all of this is the Star of Egypt. So this is an Egyptian god that they're naming this after, and it's the serpent god of chaos and darkness. It's rumored to have swallowed up the sun. So it's got this esoteric meaning for them, and
A serpent deity.
it's a serpent deity.
What a fitting connection with the prince of this world, a serpent deity, Very interesting how these things just have these weird connections. Why does NASA only name things after false gods?
Right.
Like all their rockets, their missions, these little rockets they're sending up. Why is that? And another interesting topic: why in Hebrew, when it's the word for to deceive is NASA. If you look it up,
Right.
Genesis 3:13, go to interlinear concordance and look up what this is. The woman says, the serpent gave me the apple and deceived me. And you look up what that Hebrew, it's NASA. That's interesting. Like, why is it? Just asking questions. Don't know necessarily all of the connections, but that is interesting.
I can't remember her name, but she's a professor there at Stanford, I believe, of religious studies, and she was saying that she knew a guy from NASA who was high up on a food chain. He ran part of it, and that they would ritualistically plan these launches, not just NASA too, but with SpaceX, because this guy also worked with SpaceX. And that they would make sure that certain alignments were perfect and certain times, and they would plan out these launches. It might not be all of the launches, right? There's some things for industrial purpose and whatnot, but they would do these things. And she said that he showed her some of these rockets. She pointed out, she said, are you aware that these rockets all have Latin written on the side of them? Like, who's going to read that? He's like, no, that is interesting. And but it's also even more interesting that it's an old form of Latin. Who's going to read that sort of thing? So they believe that their rituals and sacrifices have more power when people are in a state of alert or fear and stuff like that. An eclipse is happening, and you're having several places and states issuing a state of emergency.
Yeah.
Now, usually you issue a state of emergency when a disaster takes place, like an earthquake levels your city. You would declare a state of emergency. But, the idea is, well, we're doing that because we're expecting larger than normal crowds. I'm like, well, but a state of emergency, that's pretty amazing. So whether something happens or not, and like I said, I personally don't think it is. I think it's a sign for things to come. And they do these things, and it has all kinds of occultic meanings with these ancient gods that they worship and these specific times that they do things. So we've talked about earlier about the exoteric, what they tell the public, versus the esoteric, the hidden meaning, which is why I can't remember who said it, but he said, they'll be undone when everybody realizes what these signs and symbols actually mean, and you realize that they're absolutely everywhere.
Yeah. Just as a side note, maybe people who are listening, just do a search of where the largest green screen in the entire world is located. You might happen to find out that NASA it's at one of their locations. I don't know why they would have that, but just a side note there.
Right. Side note there.
Yeah.
And then we also have CERN firing up on April 8th as well.
Just to remind people, this is what the logo for CERN looks like. So you've got 666. And also here is their corporate mascot. So a corporate mascot for a non-governmental agency has Lord Sheba, the goddess of destruction, which has other connections to other gods in the past. So why would you have the goddess of destruction? And the fact that CERN was created the first website, and it was www, which in Hebrew is 666, talking about gematria. And also, why is CERN located directly above, on top of, an old ancient temple to Apollyon Abaddon?
Yeah, you're talking about Revelation 9, Revelation 9:11, I believe it is, isn't it?
Yep,
9:11.
9/11. Weird.
Um,
Another coincidence. I don't know, just
right.
coincidental,
They
but
they have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek is called Apollyon. So yes, there is an ancient ruin there that's
hmm
somewhere over CERN. Idea behind it was
yeah.
this worship of the god. It was a
hmm
temple dedicated to Apollyon.
Which means destroyer, bringer of pestilence.
Going back to Sheba, the god of destroyer, right there.
Uh-huh.
And the stated goal, right, is
hmm
of CERN is to break through the fabric of creation, the
Yeah.
universe. They're looking for other dimensions. And interestingly enough, you can see some people that one doctor, she knows people that work at CERN, and that they have like they've been successful creating a portal to bring about
Yes.
entities. Now they're
Yes.
actually saying that, and she's not the only one that's saying that.
Yeah, I mean, the former director of research in scientific computing said that the collider could open otherworldly doors to another dimension for a very tiny lapse of time. Just enough time to, quote, peer into this open door, either by getting something out of it or sending something into it,
Yes.
end quote.
And another guy that was connected with it as well, he was saying that they've made contact. I mean, he didn't go so
Mm,
far as to call them entities, but they've made contact with the other side. So they're actually interacting with non-human entities, which is a term that's been thrown around lately, via what they're doing at CERN. So again, you have this stated purpose, the exoteric meaning of it. Well, what we're trying to do is find new particles. We're trying to figure out
mhm.
how the Big Bang happened and this and that.
Yeah.
And then what you have also, the esoteric purpose behind all of this. And they're giving you hints, not just hints. I mean, people are outright stating it's like, no, we're trying to break through to the other side.
Yeah.
And people have to remember one thing, like in a concept, and this is the same thing in government, same thing in corporations. They have compartmentalization. Not everybody who works there knows what the end game actually is.
Not everyone has to be in on it, you know.
But the people that are in charge are basically saying
Yeah.
that's the stated goal. What do you think might happen? And so what we're talking about here in Revelation 9:11 is basically that this pit. So it says, I mean, if you go all the way back to the beginning of the chapter, it was stating that, it said, and the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star falling from heaven, right, representing a god coming down to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from that shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened. Hello, April 8th. And the smoke of that, with the smoke of that shaft.
I still don't think that that's happening this eclipse. Those
Yeah.
kind of things do happen based on what Revelation says. So we're looking for the signs, but we don't know when those are going to happen.
But at the same time, it's just interesting the parallel there that they would choose just that particular day to
Yeah.
start it up. And like you said, there's so many tie-ins to this bottomless pit the tie-in with the bottomless pit in the Bible, and the tie-in with this veil of fabric of reality that they're trying to break through to the other side to kind of see what's there. What could possibly go wrong
Yeah.
with something like that? I
Yeah.
can't imagine. You get this open pit, and these spirits that were imprisoned, that were rebellious against God prior to the flood, that were imprisoned. Right. This idea is these energies and these dark forces are going to be released upon the earth, and it says also in scripture that men's hearts will fail them
Yeah.
for fear of what's coming upon the earth. It's interesting too if you look at the logo of the World Economic Forum. We're talking about the meaning behind these things. Like for example, if you look at it, there's an actual eclipse in there. It is an actual eclipse. That's what it is. And you can see the actual tail end of that eclipse go through the O's there on World Economic Forum, and it forms what appears to be
Yeah.
a 666.
Yeah, I
Like
kind
just-
of see. I haven't seen that before. I've seen it in CERN's. That's pretty obvious, but I've never noticed the sixes where you can see it. I mean, it's a lot of people say, "Oh, come on, you're pushing it," but it is also interesting. Why did they go through all the O's, and why can you possibly make a 666 on all those? I mean, again, it is interesting.
It's just another weird
Yeah.
coincidence.
And
that
the
you're pointing out.
and the eclipse. I didn't never notice that either. So I mean, I don't know. Something to ask.
Yeah, there you go.
Another coincidence.
So if anybody's skeptical about any of this stuff while you're looking it up, just ask yourself, why would they be putting all of these symbols around? Why would they do a mock ritual in front of the god of Sheba?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, what would be the point of all of this if it doesn't actually have meaning to these people? And you probably shouldn't be trying to break through the veil of reality.
Yeah. And that's their stated goal, define the God particle and dark matter, antimatter. Also on their old website, it states they are looking for a gateway to the universe. These ideas of interdimensional beings, aliens, these connections where that connects to the alien thing. A lot of people think aliens as from outer space, but we think of it more as dimensional beings, like angels, like little g gods, these types of things that look like aliens and would be like aliens to us. So
Absolutely. I mean, you look at all these Pentagon disclosures that are going on right now with all these whistleblowers. Listen to what they're saying. Well, listen to how they've changed the lingo. They never use the term extraterrestrial anymore. I mean, hardly ever. They always use the term non-human entities, which is this sort of like broad net that encaptures all of this stuff. And so, I mean, what are they really telling us? Like, are these things coming from other star systems with using some exotic technology? Not to say they don't have exotic technology, but that doesn't seem to be the case, because you can see through all kinds of like ancient hieroglyphs and all of these things and all of these rituals that they do to make contact with these other gods. And remember, like when Crawley was doing a ritual, when he had everything down to a science, really, what worked, what didn't, what was considered a success for him, right, was actually making contact with a being that manifests itself. And he said, today we call them angels and demons. Remember, he's speaking at the turn of the century and on into that. And he said, tomorrow we'll call them something else. And so we've gotten enter the alien. That's exactly what they are. I mean, if they're coming from other planets, you wouldn't be able to immediately conjure them up. That wouldn't happen. They would have to travel from point A to point B. And they're doing really, really dark stuff. Like the stuff that that Paul was writing about. He said, it's shameful to even speak of the things that they do. And what they are doing, right? They're searing their consciences. They're doing unspeakable things. They're performing sacrifice with children, and they are manifesting these things. And they do these on high spiritual days. This is what they do, and this is how they're making contact with these things. So they found out, and probably through these Babylonian workings that Parsons and all these guys were doing, along with Crawley under his direction, and L. Ron Hubbard, where they would open up these channels by doing the rituals that Crawley prescribed. And when the intelligence community got wind of that, they pursued it, and they were kind of split down the middle, right? They had I believe they call it one of the investigative teams was the Collins Elite, and they were saying, "Hey, listen, I think what these guys are doing is demonic. They shouldn't do it." But the other half that seemed to have won over was like, "Hey, listen, we didn't know this stuff worked, and they're giving us information that we never thought was possible." And so immediately after that, literally in 1947, after they successfully did the Babylon working, you had this massive UFO flap. And not only that, you got this like straight up parabola of technology gain. Where did that stuff come from?
I know, exactly. The ancient alien kind of connection and all that. But I think the whole point is that there are these things that are demonic, and it's right in front of our faces. The names of the the rockets. We're talking about the Egyptian gods. Why are they always doing that?
Right.
And then you've got the connection with the red heifers and trying to make sense of all this stuff. It's like, where do you start? Except for just open your eyes and just kind of say, well, I don't know, but I am going to see what's in front of me, identify the lies, and pursue the truth. And seeing the world as a spiritual battle. It's like Ephesians 6:12. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood. We're so set on the natural world of just the things that we see, and we don't see past that. And so we don't know how to make sense of all this. There is a God, and that there is real spiritual battles going on, and we have to know the truth to be able to fight those. We have to be saved by Jesus to even be on the right side in the first place to be able to fight these battles.
It could seem hopeless You may not be able to do anything about it, but we know the ending.
Yeah.
We know that God puts an end to this. We know that it has to happen, and that he doesn't abandon his children. I mean,
Yeah.
he knows every single hair on your head.
Yeah.
And he
And
hasn't forgotten about you. He feels your pain. He's there with you.
Yeah.
And none of these things have to be scary. In fact, I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel like this is the best time to be alive. Like, what was it, Tale of Two Cities, the Dickens book, when he said it's the best of times and it was the worst of times. It's a lot like that, because at the one time, on the one hand, we're seeing the levels of evil that would make Sodom and Gomorrah blush.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you're seeing people reject it. You're seeing people come to Christ, but people that are going to last. People that aren't going to fall away. People that are going to be loyal to God, because it's going to be hard to do so. You know what I mean? It's going to be hard to do so, and so this is that separation. That when God talks about the separation between the wheat and the tares, we're going to know who is planted on good soil and who's not. And so I would just beg anybody. I would ask you, actually, what if you haven't given your life to Christ? What are you waiting on? Why would you not do that? Christianity is the only religion that actually offers the invitation to come, test, and see if it's true. If you really have a heart after him and you pursue him, he will reveal himself to you. He'll reveal his son to you. And when you have the son in your heart, then you're saved. There's a transformative nature of this sort of thing. He'll take your heart of stone and he'll turn it into a heart of flesh. It's the best decision I've ever made. I don't believe it because it's something that makes me feel better. It's like the evidence over and over and over again is apparent, and it points to God.
Yeah.
Amen.
So yeah, that's what we have for today. Put comments down below or questions or whatever. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.